Hey everyone, welcome to episode 4 of my ongoing series on classroom management. I'm switching things up this week a little bit. I was getting a little bored looking at my face in a car, so I thought I'd make things far more visually interesting with some lecture slides. Okay, a tough question to start with this week. Are you perhaps a little boring in the way that you're presenting lecture material and lessons in your classroom? Sometimes we inadvertently create problems for ourselves in terms of student disengagement, and then they start behaving like chuckleheads and causing trouble when we could have avoided a lot of that by just sort of bringing the thunder from the beginning. So I'm going to start with story time. So my very first year of teaching, I had this awesome idea. I was going to bring a kinesthetic element to my students' literature study of Amy Tan's Rules of the Game. It's a wonderful short story, a slice of her larger novel, The Joy Luck Club. And in it, there's a character named Waverly Young who is a chess prodigy. So after our traditional reading and discussing of the questions, then I thought, well, hey, let's play chess. And this was in the late 90s, before Common Core and before California state standards, when you could just play chess for an hour in class. So that was my grand idea as a brand new teacher. I was going to have my kids play chess, and I had 34 kids in the class. But the trouble was I couldn't get 17 chess sets, and I certainly didn't have the money to just go out and buy them. So after I failed to get the supplies together, I thought, well, how about we just play human chess? I'd probably seen it in a movie somewhere, but I got this great idea, not so great as it turned out, to create a large-scale chessboard out of masking tape on the pavement outside my classroom door. So there I am at 7 a.m. the day that the lesson is supposed to go, and I'm taping off my squares, and my vice principal comes up and asks me what in the world I'm doing, and I tell him, and he just sort of shrugs and shakes his head and walks away. So first period starts. I'm super excited. And I bring the kids out and I say, okay, you're going to be a pawn and you're a rook and ooh, you're the queen. And so I had the kids, 32 of them, fill in the spots on the chessboard. And then one kid on each side was sort of the controller of that side of the board. So I thought, foolishly, that the kids would be super engaged in this really cool learning activity. Yet no, they were super bored because I had essentially asked 32 kids to just stand in a 1x1 square foot of space for, I don't know, a half an hour, 40 minutes. I had no idea how long this thing was going to take. It didn't take long, maybe 3 minutes, for the kids to start acting up. They were talking, they started joking around and pushing each other, and I was getting so flustered because I'd put so much thought into it. You guys, no, stop talking. Get back in line. You're not following the rules. And I realized probably within 5 minutes of the game that it was a disaster, and I pulled the plug on it. We all went back inside, and I came up with something last minute to do. So I was to blame for those students' misbehavior because my lesson was terrible. And I actually ended up scrapping it for the later classes in the day. We didn't even go out. I just pulled up my masking tape in shame at the brunch break. All right, I bring up this story because we need to be, I learned that day, super thoughtful in what we're bringing to our students. We need energy and vitality and tons of student buy-in, and that will help us keep order in the class. I found great success in treating the kids like they're a couple years older than they actually are. So if I have freshmen, I'm talking to them like they're upperclassmen. And the years I have seniors, I treat them as though they are in college already. And when I do that, I found that students really like it and they rise to the challenge. And I do that in terms not only of the maturity that I expect and the conduct, but also the quality of the materials that I create to bring with them. I make really rigorous stuff because I want to challenge and stretch all of the kids in the room, including those top level kids. They want the challenge. And what I found is my lower level and even my resource kids also like the more sophisticated challenge. I have to chunk things up for them and definitely scaffold and, work more side by side with the lower level kids, but they can make great strides toward my end goal. If work is too easy, the kids think it's babyish, and honestly, they're sort of insulted that I would give them something that feels below grade level to them. So I can't give them things that feel too young. I really need to challenge them. And you think about it in your own life. You want to play games where it's a little bit hard for you. If a game is too easy, it's boring and you're not even going to return to it. I found Also, that when you treat them younger, the resentment takes hold and your class can start to unravel. I had a former colleague who struggled with classroom discipline. She had trouble connecting with the kids. I was in her room one day swapping out books from her cabinet, and I heard her start class with her high school sophomores, and she said, "Okay, boys and girls, go ahead and pull out your literature book and turn to page blah, blah, blah." And the fact that she called them boys and girls, kind of, I don't know, I found it, I bristled a bit when I heard that, and I'm sure the kids didn't like it either. So treat them like ladies and gentlemen. All right, people, it's time to go. And you might find just a language shift along with a curricular shift can make a big difference in your classroom. Relevance is huge. Basically, we have to find a way to get the kids to care about the curriculum, even when you kind of think, why would they in the first place? So there's some marketing that goes into this, but I didn't know this right away. In my first year teaching American literature, I was lucky if I was a week ahead of the kids in terms of learning the curriculum. Some of this stuff I hadn't seen since I was 15 or 16 years old, and some of the stuff I had never seen. So I was learning and building quickly ahead of them. And I did things like this. This is the book work that we have, the author background on Puritan minister Jonathan Edwards, and then, of course, the questions at the end of the reading selection. And I'm not against book work itself. It can be fine, and sometimes I still use this, but this cannot be our go-to. This is sort of like the death of energy and enthusiasm in the classroom. It has a place, it's one tool, but it definitely shouldn't be the tool that you're pulling out the majority of the time. So instead of doing book work, I've learned over the years, as I've gotten deeper into the material, to find ways to make them care. So how do you get kids this day and age to care about, some sermons from the late 1600s? Well, what I do is I tempt them by first of all starting with a quick write about how fear is our greatest motivator, and we have some good conversation about how that is and isn't true in our modern teenage lives. Then I give them a quick hit of the background of Jonathan Edwards in a Prezi, like I'm showing you here. And then we play a little game before we even get into the sermon. So when I teach Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, I actually give a full class game where we compare lines of the sermon before they've seen the sermon to heavy metal, like scream metal lyrics. So I have a little slice of this here for you. So I will give them word for word exactly as these things appear in their original text. The only thing I've changed is punctuation to make it flow. Now I want you to listen and read along. Which of these is a heavy metal band and which of these would be Puritan fire and brimstone minister Jonathan Edwards? Okay. So imagine I walk into the room and I'm wearing my black graduation robe. I got my white wig on and a stern expression on my face. I'm glaring at my students. I scold the boys for laughing because they're being disrespectful. And then I look at the girls who are wearing shorts, flip-flops, and I make them feel bad for showing so much skin because I am a Puritan minister. And then I begin. And I'll show one of these slices of text and I'll say it in my, judgmental Puritan minister voice. Before them laid a cold gray desert, a landscape void of life. The portal of the tower stared like the black eyes of the night. The tower stood as a spike thrust into the heart of heaven. Or I might give him a line like number 2. The devil is waiting for them. Hell is gaping for them. The flames gather and flash about them. All right, you guys, what do you think? Which one is scream metal and which one is good old-fashioned Jonathan Edwards? You got it. The top one is a band called Bloodthorn. Dang, that's heavy. And then, of course, we have number 2 is a slice of Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. So then I reveal which belongs to which. The kids love it because it's the guessing game. And actually, some of my students are familiar with the bands. How does a middle-aged English teacher know the band Bloodthorn? I do not. I do not listen to this music, but my teenage son does. And so he helped me, cull all of the lyrics together as I was putting this game together. So by the time I finished 10 of these, the kids are chomping at the bit to dig into some archaic text of Jonathan Edwards. So that's one idea, a little nugget of fun that you can add into it. So then we move on, say like into the Crucible, which is a longer work. We still need to find those modern hooks to pull our kids into that world and to see that those themes are still relevant today. So the Crucible, you probably know, was Arthur Miller's, thinly disguised commentary about Joseph McCarthy and the Red Scare. Now, a lot of literature teachers I know teach McCarthyism with the play, as we should, and they think that that's the modern witch hunt. But I got to tell you, to our kids today, things that happened in the 1950s, like, Senator Joseph McCarthy and his reign of terror, that's not modern. That's history to them, and really old dusty history to them. So when I'm teaching the Crucible, I really am conscious about making things modern that they'll care about and relate to. So when we go into the play, we're also talking about things like the treatment of Muslim Americans in post 9/11 culture. I give hypotheticals. What would happen if a HIV positive student enrolled at our school? Now, because of medical record laws, we wouldn't be notified of that. But what if rumors and gossip started that, this kid was harassed at an old school, it was in the news, and now this kid is transferred into our school, but nobody knows for sure if it's real and nobody knows the kid's name. But we have a few transfer students who've come in the last month. I asked my students, what do you think would happen on this campus if rumors like that were going about? Or if you're really comfortable going with the crunchy stuff, you can mention the plot line of a book like Salem Falls. So Jodi Picoult gives us a great modern Crucible where she has a teenage girl lie about a sexual misconduct between her and a popular male teacher at the high school. So the teacher is completely innocent. He did nothing wrong. And this girl is pure evil. And you can read the book and find out what her motives are. I won't spoil it for you there. But it's a great read. And you can totally see a witch hunt like that taking place in a small town where everyone believes the girl and no one believes the innocent. So Salem Falls is not on my required reading list for curriculum for my American Lit class, but it is an SSR book option that a lot of kids really enjoy after we do the Crucible. So what we do is we find, things that kids care about, and then we bridge that into the literature that we're doing. What do they care about? Well, social media, of course, Instagram and Snapchat and YouTube and all that. I have a separate video where I talk about a couple of specific assignments that I've used, bridging those two worlds. I gave you the bit.ly right here, so you can check that out if you're interested. And then also pop culture. I try to keep my ear to the ground of what the kids are listening to. So last week I took my middle schooler to get a smoothie after school, because that's what we do in the winter here in California. We get smoothies instead of hot chocolate. Sorry about that. And while we were in line at the smoothie place, this cool song came on that I hadn't heard before. And my seventh grader started kind of like, rocking her head back and forth. And then I heard a kid, like 3 people behind us, this like super skinny, kind of like skater, 16-year-old guy. He screamed out, "I freaking love this song." And yeah, he said freaking, which I really liked. I freaking love this song. And I laughed and we all sort of chuckled because he was so loud. And I leaned into a girl who's probably like in college at the counter. And I said, "Who's playing right now?" She's like, "Oh, it's 21 Pilots." So I'm like, oh, I got to find this band. So I've been listening to 21 Pilots, which is strange because I'm not hip now and I wasn't hip in my 20s, but I know good stuff when I hear it. And so this band, it's different. It's like alternative with rap and some techno, and it's got ukulele in it, which I love. So I'm listening to it and enjoying it. I don't know what thread I'll pull from a 21 Pilots lyric into something I do in the future, but I want to be prepared should inspiration strike. Okay, this video is getting a little bit long, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Next week, I'll do part 2 of this same "Are you boring?" conversation. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Otherwise, you guys have a great week. I'll see you next time. Bye.